This lesson is on piecewise functions. A piecewise function is a function in its graph that is broken into different parts, and different functions are defined on various domain values. These steps right here are for graphing, which we're not going to start with. We will do that later in the lesson, but these steps are for graphing. Okay, first example. Here is your function. F of x equals x squared plus 2x minus 3 if x is less than 0. It equals x plus 1 if x is greater than or equal to 0. Greater than or equal to 0. So as you can see, it has two different parts on the graph. So what I want you to do first is find f of -4. So you first have to decide which one to plug it into. So -4 is less than 0. So you're going to plug it in to the top one. So -4 squared plus 2 times -4 minus 3. And that gives you 5 when you type that in your calculator. So you're plugging in -4 wherever you see an x, it gives you 5. So this makes the point -4, 5. Well, let's look on the graph and see if we see that. If you go over to -5, -4, and up 5, it is on the graph. So we did do that correctly. All right, for the next one, it says f of -2. F of -2. Well, -2 is also less than 0. So you plug it into the top one, -2 squared plus 2 times -2 minus 3. And you can type all of that in your calculator, and it gives you -3. So your point is -2, -3. -2 is your x value. So let's check that one on the graph. -2, -3, yes. So we did that correctly. All right, the next one, f of 0, you want to plug in to the one that's equal to 0. So that's the bottom one. So we're going to do 0 plus 1, which is 1. And that makes our point 0, 1. So when you go to the graph, 0, 1 is on the graph. And the last one, 1 is greater than or equal to 0. So you plug it into the bottom one, 1 plus 1, which gives you 2. So your point is 1, 2. And if you go to the graph, 1, 2, it is on there. So that's how you can check your work. All right, let's do another one of those. All right, this one, f of x equals -1 if x is less than -3. It equals negative absolute value of x plus 5 if x is between -3 and 3, but it can't be equal to 0. And it equals positive 3x minus 13 if x is greater than or equal to 3. So this one's got 3 parts, and as you can see on the graph, it's got 3 parts. All right, f of 4, well, that's greater than or equal to 3. So we're going to plug it in to this one, 3 times 4 minus 13, which gives you -1. So your point is 4, -1. If you go to the graph, go to 4 and -1, it is on there. So that is correct. All right, the next one, f of -3. Well, -3 falls in this interval because x is greater than or equal to -3 right there. So you're going to do negative absolute value -3 plus 5. Well, if you do this by hand, the absolute value of -3 turns it into +3. If you want to just use your calculator, you have to hit the math button and go over to number, and the first one is absolute value. All right, for this one, you get 2. So the point is -3, 2. And if you check that on the graph, that does work. All right, f of -5. That is less than -3, so we're going to plug it into the top one, which is just -1. That's your answer. So the point is going to be -5, -1. So let's check that on the graph. -5, -1. It is on there. All right, f of 3. That's x is greater than or equal to 3, so you can plug it into the bottom one. So 3 times 3 minus 13 equals negative 4. So your point is 3, negative 4. All right, check that on the graph. Go to 3, down to negative 4. Yep, it is a point. And the last one, f of 0. Well, it says up here that x cannot equal 0. So this is undefined. If you look at the graph, if you go to 0, there's no point there. So there is no numerical value. All right, now we're going to switch gears and you're going to have to graph it. Well, in order to graph it, the first thing you want to do is make a table of values. And what you're going to do is you're going to put 2x plus 3 on one side and 3 minus x on the other. All right, to figure out what numbers you want to plug in, you want to use this to help you. So you want to start with whatever number they give you. So in this case, they've given you negative 1. And this one is less than negative 1. So we're going to go down. So we'll do negative 2 and negative 3. Now, can x equal negative 1 right here? And that is a no. So this is going to be an open circle, and these two are going to be closed. Okay. All right, before we finish that side, let's go ahead and jump to the other side. So for this one, x is greater than or equal to negative 1. So you start with negative 1 again, and we're going greater than. So that would be 0 and then 1 if you counted numbers greater than. For this one, it is equal to, so they're all closed dots on the graph. Okay, to finish this out, you want to plug each of these numbers into the function. So I'm going to do 2 times negative 1 plus 3. So I'm plugging it into this top function. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2 plus 3 is 1. When you plug negative 2 in, 2 times negative 2 is negative 4 plus 3 gives you negative 1. And when you plug in negative 3, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. Okay. Over here, you're plugging into this one. So 3 minus negative 1 is 4. 3 minus 0 is 3. And 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay, so we're going to plot those on the graph. So we're going to go to negative 1, 1, and put an open circle. Then we're going to go to negative 2, negative 1, and put a closed circle. And negative 3, closed circle. And then we're going to connect all these and just put an arrow on the end. All right, then we're going to jump over here and plot these. So negative 4, 1 gets a closed circle, 0, 3, and 1, 2. And you connect those, and the arrow goes that way. So that is your graph. All right, so I want you to graph this one. So when you make your table of values, you write the top 1/2 absolute value of x minus 4. It's going to go on the left, and 3 goes over here. All right, to get your numbers, start here. So you're going to put a 0. I know even though it can't equal it, we're still going to do it, but it's going to be a open circle since it can't equal it. But it can be anything other than 0. So let's go up 1 and down 1, and those are going to be closed circles because it can't equal those. And then for the 3, the only thing it can be is 0, and that is a closed circle. All right, so to get the rest of your numbers, you're plugging into the function. So 1/2 times the absolute value of 0 minus 4 is negative 4. 1/2 times the absolute value of 1 minus 4 is negative 3.5. And 1/2 times the absolute value of negative 1 minus 4 is negative 3.5. Feel free to pause this video and type them into your calculator to check. For this one, your answer is just going to be 3, 0, 3. All right, so let's plot those on the graph. So I go to 0, negative 4, and I do an open circle. I go to 1, negative 3.5, and do a closed circle. and -1, -3.5, closed circle. And you want to connect those. Remember that it is an absolute value, so it makes sense that it is a V. All right, it makes sense that the graph looks like a V. And then for this other one, you just have the point 0, 3. And that's what your graph looks like. All right, for this one, it's got 3 different parts. So you're going to divide your table of values into thirds. So you got a 3, 2x minus 1, and 4 minus x. All right, so now you go over here and you want to start with -2. And then I want numbers less than -2. So that would be -3 and -4. And it's equal to, so that means they're all going to be closed dots. All right. For the next one, 2x minus 1, it wants you to go from -2 to +1. So we'll do -2, -1, 0, and 1. And they're all going to be closed circles except for -2 because it's not equal to that one. So that one's going to be an open circle. All right. And then lastly, x is greater than 1, so you start with 1 and you want to go bigger, 2 and 3. It's not equal to 1, so that one's an open circle, and then the rest will be closed. All right, for this one, your answer for all of them will be 3 because that's what it equals. It equals 3. For this one, you're going to have to plug them in to 2x minus 1. So 2 times -2 is -4 minus 1 is -5. 2 times -1 is -2 minus 3 is -3. Plug in 0, it gives you -1, and when you plug in 1, it gives you 1. And over here, when you plug in 1, you get 3. When you plug in 2, you get 2. And when you plug in 3, you get 1. All right, so let's plot those. So the first one is -2, 3, -3, 3, and -4, 3. And it keeps going to all numbers less than -2. Then we've got -2, -5, but this one's an open circle. You got to be careful with that. And then -1, -3, 0, -1, and 1, 1. And this one does not keep going because there's a third part to the graph. We've got 1, 3, open circle, 2, 2, and 3, 1. And this one will keep going because it's all numbers greater than -1. All right, last graphing example. So for this one, you've got -x plus 2 squared plus 4. You've got a 1, and you've got 2 root x plus 1 minus 2. Okay, so this one is x is less than -1. So you start with -1, go less than -2, -3. For the middle one, x can only equal -2, so that's the only number you have to put in there. And the last one, x is greater than -1. So you start with -1 and you go greater than, so 0 and 1. Okay, these first two, I'm sorry, the top and the bottom are not equal to, so that's going to make that an open dot and that an open dot. Also, this one has an extra little trick to it. X cannot be -2 on the first one, so that's also an open dot as well. Okay, the rest of these are going to be closed. Okay, so when you plug in -1 into this function, I would recommend just typing in your calculator negative parenthesis -1 plus 2 squared plus 4. I type it all in at one time, and the calculator will give you +3. Then I'd plug in -2 the same way, and the calculator will give you 4. And then when you plug in -3, it'll give you 3. For this one, the answer is automatically going to be a 1. For this one, when you plug it in the calculator, it's going to be 2 root -1 plus 1. And then make sure you arrow out from underneath the root and put -2. And the calculator will give you a -2. Then you'll plug in 0. The calculator will give you 0. And plug in 1. The calculator will give you a decimal, I think. 2 square root 1 plus 1 arrow over -2. Yep, gives you 0.83. Okay, so let's graph this. So I go to -1, 3, and that's an open dot. -2, 4, open dot, and then -3, 3, closed dot. Now this one connects in a curve, which makes sense because it's a quadratic, which is a U. But this one's a flipped and upside down U. All right, our next point, -2, 1, closed circle. And then our last column, we go -1, -2. Oh, that should have been an open circle. 0, 0, and 1.83. And this one also makes a curve, which we know from our work earlier, square roots are curves. All right, last example. During a particular year, the taxes owed by a married person filing separately with an adjusted gross income of X dollars is given by the piecewise function below. Find and interpret. We're not going to interpret, we're just going to find T of 70,000 plus T of 40,000. Well, 70,000 is greater than 43,250. So we plug in 70,000 into this one. So I'm going to write 0.31, 70,000 minus 43,250 plus 9,783. Then I'm going to put a plus, and we have to figure out which one to plug 40,000 into. Well, 40,000 is between 17,900 and 43,250. So we're going to plug 43,000 into this one. So all right, 0.28, 40,000 minus 17,900 plus 2,685. And I type all of that in my calculator. And it gives you 26,948 and 50 cents.